Yeah, it's over a month. Indeed, it was on May the 29th that the president said subsidy is gone. And I know a lot of people will not forget that voice in a hurry. And then we woke up, to the new price list. So the government is supposed to have saved some money between May the 29th, or let's say from June to July, So the whole of June, there was no subsidy on our petrol prices. So let's find out what may be happening or what should be happening in the post-subsidy regime. I did promise you that Dr. Muda Yusuf will be here physically, and he's here with us. Dr. Yusuf, good morning. Thank you for your time.
Good morning.
We saw that you used your weekend to think about this, so it's a good time to also talk about it. First of all, your commendation to the president's move, the executive order. But some people say, well, why should we celebrate that much? It's just suspension, deferment. It's still going to come to us, and we're still going to have to pay those taxes anyways.
No, not exactly. There is the deferment component of it, which was the Finance Act.
That's the Finance Act 2022?
Yes.
That's the one that is operational in 2023?
Yes. That was deferred till, I think September or
yes,
so.
September.
And the whole idea is to ensure that there is enough notice, to be able to implement those provisions. The second part, which is like an indefinite suspension, was the excise duty component and the grain tax. Those ones were practically suspended indefinitely.
Okay, because we just saw suspension, so, a lot of people are asking if it's just suspension, then it might just come back.
No, it may come back, but it's not likely to come back soon. The ones that will come back soon, the government was very specific as to the time that the Finance Act will be back, and also some provisions in the Customs and Excise Act will be back. I think one in August, one in September. But for the excise duty...
And the telecommunication 5%.
Yes, all those ones have been put on hold, as it were. So that is where the main relief is. Because the pressure that the excise duty was going to impose on the manufacturing sector was going to be very, very immense. It was going to be very profound, that it may even threaten the survival or sustainability of some of the firms. Because they already have a whole lot of issues they were contending with. There are all sorts of taxes, exchange rate, cost of energy, challenges of purchasing power, and all of that and all of that. So for it to now add, in addition to that, we already had excise duty they were paying. It's not as if some of them were not paying excise duty at all. But what the last administration did was to increase it further, even beyond what was in existence.
Yeah, we talked about some of those increases, the tertiary education, some of those, I think from 5% to 7%. You had some
from 2.5% to 3%.
Exactly. But those things still stand.
They still stand in the Finance Act.
Yes, so they will come into play by September.
They will still come in. And also there's a provision...
We're hoping there'll be a tweak to some of them. Anyway, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele is there now. So,
yes, he's an advocate of reform.
Exactly.
So it's an opportunity for him.
We'll be watching out for him and play back some of his track-offs.
Exactly. He's an advocate that we need to rationalize some of these taxes.
And to expand the tax net instead of increasing the taxes.
Increasing the taxes, So I think that is what he stood for. And I think the government believes in his position. That is why he has now been appointed to chair the tax and fiscal policy reform, which is a good thing. But just as you said, we need to celebrate cautiously about this thing, because the component that was just deferred, in the Finance Act, for instance, there is a proposal to increase the tertiary education tax. There is also a proposal that there will be an excise duty on all services. The Act was not specific as to which services will attract excise duty. So it was something that is, open-ended. So there are quite a number of concerns in the Finance Act itself. So for that, I think we'll still come back to engage on that. But at least we must acknowledge the fact that the excise duty, which is perhaps the biggest concern of the manufacturing sector, has been put on hold for now. So for me, I think that is something that we should commend the president for. At least he demonstrates some sensitivity, being responsive to the yearnings of the manufacturing sector. But we are still looking forward to more reliefs.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the man on the street is looking forward to more reliefs, and that is very important.
Of course, and that's what we're going to delve into now. Yes. Especially the issue of palliative. Now, it's been about a month. The government is supposed to have saved about how much? What should they be using it for? And we haven't seen the palliatives yet. Well,
I think some element of it is contained in the executive order.
Oh, okay. So we should take that as part of the palliative.
It's part of the palliative.
Okay, all right.
But more importantly, particularly when we are talking about the issue of cost of living, cost of transportation, energy cost, electricity cost, cost of food, those are the things that are most paramount at this time. So when we talk about palliatives, these are the things we expect the government to do and do very quickly. And there are quite a number of instruments of policy that the government can use. Yes, you talk about the savings. We should begin to see evidence of plowing back part of the savings to support the vulnerable segments. Because the whole idea of this reform is to redistribute income, from those who are either looting the money, corruption and all of that, to be able to support the vulnerable segments. And the areas of key vulnerabilities are in the areas of affordability of food, cost of transportation, electricity, and energy costs. So these are the things that we expect government to do. And of course, government is talking already about reviewing wages, although the percentage
the risk
of people...
The risk of that, too, on inflation is also...
It may not be that profound, given the current policy regime. It will not be that profound. What percentage of our workforce are in the public sector anyway? But that needs to happen anyway, inflation or no inflation, because we cannot afford to leave the minimum wage at 30,000. What can 30,000 buy these days? Not to talk of even other wages of very senior people in the public and even the private sector. So there's a need to see that review. But the inflationary impact of it is not likely to be very profound if you take into account how we manage other segments of the macroeconomic environment. For instance, if you reduce the amount of ways and means that the government injects into the system, it will moderate inflation. If we're able to stabilize the foreign exchange markets and ensure that we have better liquidity, of course, there's still a bit of turbulence in that space. But after some time, we get to a cruising level and things will calm down. We get to an equilibrium where things will calm down because we had a huge backlog of foreign exchange demand, which had accumulated over the years. So that is exerting a lot of pressure currently on the I&E window. And with all these reforms, now the government has said that the international oil companies can also sell directly to the banking system. And I expect that even the BDCs, if they're also incorporated into it, all these things will ease liquidity in the foreign exchange market. So in a couple of months, I think that things should stabilize. So I think the thing to do now is for the government to come up with concessions. In addition to whatever they will do about wage review, concessions in the area of taxation.
One of the tracks we had in that report, Mr. Peter Bankole talked about tax holiday, even if it's just 6 months.
SMEs, we have a threshold of exemption of 25 million turnover for SMEs to be exempted from company tax and VAT. We can expand that, increase that to around 35 million for SMEs to be exempted. And even for payee, anybody earning 200,000 and below should be exempted from payee. Then we need to look at some critical segments of the economy, like those who are in the food sector, agriculture, processing, and all of that. We need to give them a lot of tax reliefs so that when their cost of production comes down, they'll be able to provide food cheaper. The same thing with those in petroleum products. Now, we have been told that quite a number of these petroleum marketers are now importing fuel. Rather than be talking about imposing VAT of 7.5% on diesel, that is not right at this time.
Yeah, we haven't
So
heard
we should
anything
freeze
about
all these
that.
things.
Yes, we haven't had any updates on that.
No, we should freeze it. That should be
it's still
reversed.
there.
Because we are talking about bringing down energy costs, especially in this transition period. I'm not talking about political transition now. I'm talking about the economic transition. We should freeze all these taxes. And the government should issue a circular to all its agencies. All these taxes, levies, all these 1,000 naira for proof of ownership, all those things should be suspended. Because we need to demonstrate sensitivity to the plight of the people. So all those things should be put on hold. And all these people importing fuel, if there are charges they are paying, if there are taxes that are being imposed, let us waive it, so that the landing cost of petroleum products can go down further. Because we cannot afford another increase. So we need to use a mix of tax policies, a mix of import duty tariff policies, trade policies, to be able to calm this tension. Because we need to do that very, very quickly. And policy measures are low-hanging fruits. There are things you can deploy very quickly. Before you deal with the issue of electricity and all of that, you have to deal with all of that, even electricity. The government should freeze the tariff on electricity for now.
And the discos will complain that they need the operational
they need
costs
to be supported by government. Why not? I mean, there's nothing wrong if we subsidize something like that. Luckily, we have 3 bands or 4 bands of electricity consumers now. The vulnerable segment, please leave them, let them have peace for now, so that people can continually adjust to the current pressures. So these are the things that we need to do. We also need to deploy trade policy, because there's a way in which your trade policy can also help to reduce the pressure on the people. There are quite a number of products that are produced within the sub-region. Tomatoes, onion, all of these things. Some of our neighboring countries have these things in abundance. There's nothing wrong if we ease some of this inflow into the country to ease the prices. We have rice mills all over the place. Lagos has the biggest rice mill in Africa today, but they don't have the paddy. They need the free stock to be able to roll out the rice. The same thing up north. Capacity utilization in many of these mills, I'm not sure it's up to 30%, because they don't have the raw materials. So without jeopardizing the interest of the rice farmers, if we need to augment what they are producing with the importation of rice paddy, let us do that, so that all these idle rice mills can come into operation, produce more local rice, and reduce the price. So these are some of the measures that we need to put in place. It's not everything that is actually money. If we tweak some of these policies, we can bring a lot of relief to the citizens.
And now we have the Economic Council sitting. We have, the meeting of the union and trade unions and government representatives, all trying to put their heads together. So there'll also be a need to coordinate, because you've mentioned a whole lot of things, from the issue of tax relief to the issue of agriculture, working with the farmers, easing the borders.
Yes.
We do know that in Nigeria, sometimes when we do have challenges and the solution comes, from this quarter and that quarter, and sometimes there's conflict of interest. So, there should be a kind of coordination of all of this, because when you have too many groups working to solve a problem, then, we see from different perspectives and we might be clashing.
Yes, coordination is very important, so that we don't see conflicting actions. Now the president is very concerned about providing relief to citizens. Now, suddenly we heard that one agency has imposed VAT on diesel. One agency has imposed 1,000 naira
for car ownership.
For car ownership. Those things are conflicting. So every of these agents should take a cue from what the president is saying. And I'm happy the president appointed Adiza Bala Usman as special advisor on coordination or something. So that means that the president recognizes the importance of coordination in the policy process. And from the document we saw from the Policy Advisory Committee, the president himself is going to chair a coordinating committee of all the central bank, monetary policy, fiscal policy, trade. The president will be the chair. again, that underscores the importance that the administration is placing on the significance of coordination. So coordination is very important. Now, Taiwo Dele is there now for tax reform. We should have some, elements of trade reform. We should be talking of import duty reforms. We should be talking, quite a lot of things that need to work together.
It sounds very interesting times in Nigeria, and we see some positive moves and reaction from World Bank. World Bank upgraded our growth forecast from, I think, 2.8 to 3.3 and all of that. But one thing his time is up. But, the president says he wants lower interest rates.
Yes.
And inflation is still surging. Yes. MPC is meeting later this month. I don't know how that is going to be coordinated.
Well, there are a number of ways. We have the development finance window, which was very robust under Emefiele. We can continue with that. Because I know the real sector, quite a number of them also benefited. The SME window, also for some SMEs, the BOI, the Bank of Industry, all these development finance institutions, they can continue to provide that window. Because for some of them, it will not be easy to take loan or face the interest rate, the pure market interest rate. To be very difficult, particularly for those in the real sector. So I think for a start, we can begin to explore the development finance window to be able to provide low credit and long tenured funds for some segments of the economy.
All right, sounds interesting. Even though some people have said that there's a need to audit, what the Emefiele time did with it, to audit the amount spent compared with the impact.
Of course.
Before we now delve into that again.
Of course. There are issues. All these things need to be properly fine-tuned.
Exactly. All right, we need to thank you so much, Dr. Muda Yusuf, the Chief Executive Officer of Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you very much. Thank you.